Hey, hey. I thought we were going to pull it off. I really honestly did. I thought we were going to pull it off. I had an hour. To sit here and get this thing ready. I really thought we were going to do it, and no. Nope. Not going to happen. Not today. But you know what? We don't want to spoil a perfect record. So welcome from the echo chamber to the Stratosphere Lounge, ladies and gentlemen. It's incredible. It's incredible. And here we are. And guess what? We've set up, we usually have the other camera over there. Sometimes we have two cameras on this baby. And we have two cameras on this baby today, too. Let me show you where the other one is. We got a special mystery edition camera here. Here we go. Ready? Check it out. It's awesome. It's fairly cool. All right, check it out. Ready? Now, I darn near thought that dividing line that you can see right there looks like almost like a graphic overlay, but that's actually part of my office. And you know how you can prove it? I'll show you. I'll show you how you can prove that that's an actual real camera and not just kind of an insert graphically of Astrogirl. And the way you do that is just like this. Ready? See, it's just that simple. I should have a little more light over there, but other than that, it's not too bad. It's great to be here. Great to be back in the Stratosphere Lounge. Got a problem with those little dissolves. It's always one thing I just cannot. I don't care. I really don't care. There's so much to talk about since last time I was talking to you guys, and I really don't care thing is really kind of a big part of it. When I say don't care, it doesn't mean I don't care, but what it really means, I guess, is that I don't care. I care, but I'm not gonna die over it. It has been amazing. It's been an amazing 2 weeks. Those of you who were around last time or saw the show in its YouTube iteration know I was in some real trouble last time, and I guess I'm still in some real trouble. But the fact is, starting on Friday, we tape in the show on Wednesday the 29th, so starting on last Friday, things started to get better. 2 weeks ago, I was talking about this stage 3 adrenal fatigue, and I was right smack in the middle of it, and I was really hurting. I slept through April, and I slept through April in such a way that it actually really scared me pretty badly. There was a point where I had already been sleeping 10 days, 2 weeks, something like that, for 20 hours a day, 22, as I said last time, a couple weeks ago. I'd get up, I'd, kind of be groggy for 2 or 3 hours, and I'd go sleep for another 20 hours and wake up for another 3 hours, maybe 4, and bam, bat out again. That's some serious mojo, and that's not a good deal. So somewhere around Friday, things got better. To give you an idea just how bad things they're really much better. On Tuesday, I normally go down and shoot Afterburner on Tuesdays, Hot Seat and Trifecta. And I went to PJTV on Tuesday. I didn't have the Afterburner script. I usually have it, if not the night before, that morning. And I went down there, and I thought, well, I'll write it in the conference room. I've done a few of my best down there. I've done some of my best work in the conference room down there at PJTV. And I got down there. I did the 3 trifectas, and I didn't have the strength to do the hot seats, which are pretty easy. Not a chance on the Afterburner. So I said, could I do it on Thursday? They said, sure. They've been really great about this. So I went down on Thursday, and I still didn't have the script, but I thought, okay, I'll write it in the conference room. Sat in the conference room on Thursday, and I stared at the wall for about an hour. Just stared at the wall. I didn't even know I was really staring at the wall. And nothing. So, again, they were terrific down there. I came back up, and I would get to the parking space here at the fabulous, when I say fabulous, I mean the really fabulous Stratosphere Lounge Studio. And, I'd get into the parking space down below. That'd be my private parking space. And I would stop the car and I'd turn off the key, and I'd kind of look at the wall, the concrete wall. And next thing I know, I say, how long have I been staring at this wall? About half an hour. Really? Yeah, about half an hour. Okay. And then sometimes I'd pull in my parking space and I'd stare at the wall for 10 minutes, and then I'd fall asleep for 40 minutes in the car. Now, it wasn't like I was falling asleep on the freeway, and this is the thing that's really interesting about it. It wasn't. I've been that tired many times. I've been that tired for years of my life, or just kind of coming home late, and it's just like, God, I'm just drifting off to sleep. It wasn't that at all. It's like I just didn't have the concentration to get out of the car. I could drive the car safely, and I was alert, but I just didn't have the ability to put any consequences together. So anyway, so they said, you want to try it again on Friday? And I thought, man, Friday morning I got up to write this thing. I just wasn't there. And once again, for the third time, I went down there. I knew what I wanted to write. I had a pretty good idea what I wanted to write, but I knew this class of 2015 thing was a big, big deal, and I knew it had a lot of different things to cover, and my mind was just mush. It was just garbage. And somewhere on the drive down at about 12 o'clock on Friday, me and my super badass Camaro, I was going up Sepulveda Pass on the way down to PJTV, and for the first time in 3.5, maybe 4 weeks, I thought, you know what, maybe I could pass the car in front of me. Because for the previous 3 weeks, it's like, I don't know who's up in front of me, but I sure as heck hope they're going to the PJTV studios, because I'm just going to follow them. It's just this kind of mental lethargy. I was 5 or 6 quarts low on cortisol, folks. And so I actually passed a car or two on the way down. I felt just the tinges of like, man, okay, I'm feeling a little better here. Went down there, got in the conference room, and pounded out that class of 2015. And I've been watching these things very carefully, these cortisol levels, and I was looking at the chart and all that other stuff. I'll probably post it just for giggles. But it rises during the day, and my energy levels always have come up during the afternoon and into the evening, but at least in this particular case, they came up enough for me to deliver. So I knocked that script out, and then I went in and shot it, and I was really happy with it. And then, edited it, came back up, had some dinner with some friends. I was starting to feel alive again. That was Friday. Been feeling better every day since then, and probably somewhere around Saturday or Sunday, I woke up at about, 6:30 in the morning, and instead of just going right immediately back to sleep, I woke up thinking, I've actually had a little, I've had enough sleep. I've actually slept enough. I'm doing things that I never thought I would do, ever. Taking massive doses of vitamins and all these supplements, licorice extract supplements. I've got an appointment scheduled with an endocrinologist to make sure that there's no pathology. They ran early a month ago when I found out about this problem. We ran a very comprehensive blood test, and there was no indication that it was Addison's or anything. Addison's is when your adrenal glands are basically cooked and they're not coming back, and you have to be on hormone supplements for the rest of your life. It doesn't look like that's the case. I think I was just so stressed. So just because I think this is really interesting and maybe of some use to many of you out there, I'll just tell you this. This is a couple things here that are shocking to me, really shocking. One of them is I have been, prior to this kind of meltdown, and when I say meltdown, I don't mean like a hysterical outburst. I mean just like melting down into the bed. I was putting in 12, 13, 14 hours a day every day, including Saturdays and Sundays, at least 6, 7, 8 hours every day, coming into the office every day, coming in late, staying late and stuff. And then when this thing happened to me, and I realized how serious it was, I remembered the example of my friend Andrew Breitbart. And when Andrew Breitbart went down the first time, a year before he died, he went down once, and we talked to him, Jeremy and I, and tried to tell him to lighten up. And he didn't listen. He listened for a couple, 3 months. But I remember thinking when Andrew had his first heart attack a year before he died, that if somebody said to me, "Hey man, you've had a heart attack and you have to make changes or you're not going to make it." If somebody had said to me, "Hey, you have to go out every night in the golf course, naked under a full moon once a month and, shake a laurel leaf over your head," if that's what they said it would have had to do to get better, that's what I would have done. So Andrew got better for a while, and then he didn't. And then he just, he just kept pushing himself and kept pushing himself, and like me, felt he had to save the country single-handedly, and you can't do that. And then a year after his first heart attack, he went down with a second heart attack, and there was no third heart attack. So this actually got my attention. And I'd always told myself if I found myself in that kind of situation, I would take it seriously, and I did take it seriously. So what I did was, right as I began to realize how serious this condition I had was, I just basically said, well, there's nothing I do, there's no amount of work I do, there's no deadlines I have that are worth my life. And so if there's something coming up later today that is causing me stress that I can't make for whatever reason, I'm going to cancel it. And Desiree, Astro Girl, has been fantastic. She said, no, nothing's on fire. We missed a couple weeks of time over targets, but we were behind we'd burned through the questions. We'd taken all the questions that the members had submitted. We had 60 of them in the can, and we weren't getting any more questions. Did another push for some questions, shot another 15. The latest 15 time over targets were shot probably the day before I actually went down. I look like a corpse. I am barely alive on these last 15 time over targets, 15060 through 15075. I can't believe how awful I look. Anyway, so the first point I wanted to make was, to my absolute astonishment, I went from putting in 12, 13-hour days to 2 or 3 hour days, and sometimes no days, just none. If I didn't have anything that had to be done that day for the last 3 weeks, I just didn't come in. I just stayed home and slept. And just slept and slept and slept and slept and slept. And I wasn't even watching movies for the first 2 weeks or anything. I wasn't even watching TV. I was too tired to watch TV. So in the last couple weeks and months, I've been working 2-3 hours a day, and many days not working at all. My point is that, and this is the thing that's such a wake-up call, and I hope some of this actually helps you. I found that by going into work 2 or 3 hours a day compared to going into work 12 or 13 hours a day, I was not noticeably behind. In fact, there was essentially no noticeable difference between an attitude of, well, if it gets done today, okay, and if not, then that's not the end of the world. Go home and relax. That attitude and the sense that I'd had for 10 years, 20 years of this onrushing train that just, this has to happen, this has to be done, the stress. There was no fundamental difference in the output. So I'm amazed at how blunt I had let that blade of that axe become. I mean, I was just trying to chop down trees with a wiffle bat. So that was really something. And I'd always admired Glenn Reynolds, our friend the Instapundit, because he is a full-time law professor, plus he updates that website of his 30 times a day. And I'd always wondered, I said, man, Glenn's on vacation again. Yeah, Glenn goes scuba diving 3-4 times a year. And the reason he does it is so that he can come home and work the rest of the time. I hadn't been on vacation in 7 years. Anyway, so that's a wake-up call for me. And for those of you who may feel that you're in a similar situation to me, where you're just running on pure stress and adrenaline and just stuck in the hamster wheel, I used to tell people, hey, how you doing, Bill? You busy? It's like, I'm melting the bearings on the hamster wheel. I mean, I'm running as fast as I can, and I can't keep up. It's just not true. And you will put yourself into the kind of condition I was in if you keep it up, and maybe you won't get the opportunity to have a fundamental good health, I guess. I mean, I had an arterial blockage check back in 2011, and I had an irregular heartbeat, which I know now why. But yeah, it's like I went cardiogram, stress cardiogram, echocardiogram, radioactive tracer dye. And after I had that final step done, the cardiologist said, hey, don't bother me, kid, you're going to live forever. So I thought, okay, swell. My point is that I was under a lot of stress, and fortunately I had a healthy heart and no arterial blockage. If I'd had arterial blockage, I might have joined my friend Andrew Breitbart in the emergency room, and there was a time there where I said to Jeremy, when I was really, really hurting there for about two to 3 weeks, I said, pal, I can't come in and do this today, because if I do, I'm going to be talking politics with Andrew Breitbart tomorrow. And he was terrific. So the first thing is you can walk away from it, and the world doesn't come to an end. Believe it or not. I didn't believe it, but sometimes nature puts you down. That was the first thing. The second thing is, and this is going to be hard for many of you to accept, but it's true. One of the things that was causing me so much stress for so many years is I felt, and I'm still getting over feeling, I'm really just releasing this, kind of letting it go. But for 10 years, 5 years, 3 years, whatever, I felt like the laziest man on planet Earth. I really did, and I'm still occasionally find myself in that situation. I just felt so lazy. And I'd say this to one or two people. They said, Bill, you're putting out 17 video segments a week. Most people don't put that out in a year. You're putting out 17 video segments a week. How are you lazy? And the thing of it was when you get into that kind of death spiral, for me, I'm not speaking for anybody else, just speaking for myself. When I was in that kind of death spiral, I felt like I was the laziest guy in the world because I was tired all the time. So I'd get up and I'd drag myself out of bed, and I'd fill myself full of caffeine, and for the last year, Adderall to get through the day because I was so tired. Must be something wrong with me. And then, okay. And I was tired all the time. And I would come home and want to take a nap, and that made me feel like I was lazy. I was late getting out of bed. That made me feel lazy. I'd come home at midnight, 10 or 11, and I'd be so wired that I wouldn't get to sleep till 4 or 5 in the morning. And that made me feel kind of lazy, just sitting around doing nothing. And then, next thing you know, it's 9 or 10 o'clock, and you can't wake up at all. I should have brought the chart. You know what? I'm going to do it, too. I'm going to do it. I'm just kind of either fearless, shameless, or too stupid to know any better. Give me a second here. I'm going to import this chart because this chart is really pretty cool. I don't want to take the quick tour of my new iPhotos. I just want it to go. Just go. Don't. Just go. There we go. All right. So hang on one second. I'm going to bring this in, and then we can all talk about it together. Won't that be fun? Anyway, I was just so tired of being tired all the time, and I just felt so bloody lazy. Will that go in there? That needs to come up here. Sorry, hang on one second, folks. Don't panic. Everything's totally cool. It's all completely under control. I know we sometimes have to improvise, but sometimes improvising is good. Hey, look at that. All right, here we go. Let me tell you how bad a situation was for me. I'm going to show you my cortisol stress results that came back a while ago. So here they go. Hopefully this will work, and let's have a look. Here we are. All right, so these are my cortisol levels. Cortisol is a stress hormone. It does all sorts of wonderful things. It produces all kinds of other benefits. And one of the things that cortisol does is it wakes you up. And cortisol gets released normally around sunrise or so as the light comes in through your windows, and it starts to dump this cortisol into the system, and the cortisol wakes you up. So if you look at this chart, the red line is the top level of normal. High normal is the red line. The green line is bottom normal. And waking cortisol should be, if you look cortisol morning, your cortisol should be between 13 and 24. If you look at the yellow line, that's yours truly. Mine was 1.7. So the minimum was supposed to be 13, and mine was 1.7. That's a pretty sad little statement. No wonder I couldn't wake up. I mean, look at that. The green and the blue lines are the error bars for where healthy should be, and there's yours truly down there at the yellow. And then I got a little bit better as the afternoon went on, and I was still below the minimums all day, but it's bad. The only time my cortisol level gets above the minimum is the one time when it's not supposed to be there, and that's at night. So no wonder I was kind of having these sort of stress-related nightmares and trying to figure out how to get a video online, and waking up again and again and again, and just couldn't get over it. So anyway, that's not a good chart. As I say, it's one of the reasons why I've ended up feeling so lazy, was because I was so tired all the time. So that was another big revelation. The fun thing about the show for me, and I know it seems to help a lot of other people, but it's good for me too. Just, I'm just brutally honest about this. Sometimes it benefits other people. So when I did this, when I got put down and I could not stop, I just couldn't wake up. And I just slept and took everything that didn't have to absolutely happen off the table, and some of the things that did have to happen went off the table. I just stopped taking all this medication. I stopped taking the antidepressants. I stopped taking the Xanax that would get me flatlined enough to get some sleep at night. I started taking a Adderall to push through this daytime afternoon sleepiness. And by the way, I was working on Sunday Morning Shootout in 2003, 2004, and I would fall asleep in the edit bay with people in the room. I just conk out like that, bam. So this has been there for a long time, a long time. And I just, I don't know. I just stopped taking it. I've been under the care of a really terrific nutritionist, real specialist who sat me down for an hour and a half before we even got started and asked me what I wanted to do with my life, in terms of kind of wellness and fitness. I don't want to be tired all the time. So this is the last little bit of the rant. We'll finish up the astronomy show, but this is important. Look, I'm not one of those people, at least not until the last month or so, not one of these people who, is one of these folks who really just condemn Western medicine. I always had a lot of confidence in Western medicine. I still have a lot of confidence in Western medicine. However, again, this is something some of you may want to take to heart. I had been complaining about being tired to my current general practitioner for no less than 8 years. I would go in and say, I'm exhausted. Here's a shot of B12, and I'm tired, or my, just drive is low. Just no irregular heartbeat. Yeah, well, we took you to the top of the line in terms of filled you full of this radioactive tracer dye. You don't have any arterial blockage. That was the end of it. Why was my heartbeat irregular? Why was I tired all the time? Why was I tired all day? Nobody asked me those questions, despite the fact I kept going back in, and I kept asking. But I'd get a blood test. Yeah, you look fine. Out you go. When I couldn't get through this, the day, went to a psychiatrist and got prescribed Adderall as a result of ADHD, and great. The Adderall worked great, got me through the day. The whole last year was because I was taking 20 milligrams, and I walked it down to 10, then to 5 of Adderall, and caffeine pills, no dose. Pushed through this exhaustion, and it just got to be standard. I didn't even think twice about it. But I was tired all the time. And I would sleep for 12 hours or 13, 15 hours sometimes for the last 20 years of my life, and I would wake up tired. Anyway, I chucked all of it. I just chucked it all. I chucked the antidepressants. I chucked all of it. It's gone. It's been gone for 3 weeks now, and I feel a lot better. I only started feeling good on Friday, but every day I felt a lot better. Been eating a lot better. Been taking massive doses of all kinds of supplements and vitamins, and that's been good too. Mostly I've been sleeping and relaxing, and mostly I've been cutting this stress out of my life. Is this going to end the world today if this doesn't happen? No. Okay. I wrote that class of 2015 thing in a state of real adrenal exhaustion, and I thought it was really good. I was very proud of it. And so I'm beginning to think about, well, my God, man, what will happen? I mean, right now you're putting in 2 3-hour days, 4-hour days, but they're powerful 4-hour days. What'll happen when you start putting in 8-hour days or 10-hour days, 5 days a week, and that's it, you go home? I think I'll actually get things done, like movies and things like that. So anyway, I just wanted to say, and by the way, George Freeland just made a comment. He said, everybody needs to stay from the monitor for the last couple of hours before bed. This woman said that too. I said, I can't even read off an iPad? No. Apparently, the transmission of light into your eyes is making it really, really tough to do that. So for what it's worth, I would pass it on. Dave Big Booty just asked when I went flying. I hadn't been flying for 3 months. In the last several weeks, I've been flying once a week, maybe twice a week. You'll be pleased to know that I don't ever fly when I'm not feeling good. And these are just local flights, and I was, when I was awake. So I'm doing much better, and I think next week I'll be doing much better than I'm doing this week. Got the sleep back under some cycle. One other thing, by the way, and you're talking to a kid, this is a nice segue for the astronomy show, talking to a guy who got a job in the planetarium and has been working as part of the Southern Cross Astronomical Observatory since he was 13 years old. So this has been a problem my whole life, and that is I've had a very poor sleep cycle and a very irregular sleep cycle. And one of the things I didn't realize until about a week ago was that what I had previously considered to be one of my best friends turned out to have been one of my lifelong enemies, and that was blackout curtains. Because when you sleep late or when you sleep during the day, blackout curtains, you just think are your friends. I mean, I'd close these things in my room, it'd be black. dark. Because I'd be staying up till 3 or 4 in the morning, and I couldn't wake up at 6. I'd just get some sleep. So I sleep late, which means I stay up late, which means I sleep late, and so on. Not too long ago, I realized, I'm waking up at 9 or 10 o'clock in the morning, and it feels like night in here. So I just opened the curtains, and now I wake up in the morning when the sun hits my eyelids, and I start to wake up around 6:30 a.m. because I'm getting to bed at 8:30, 9, 10 p.m. Now, I wake up at 6:30 a.m. and I'm still pretty low on the cortisol, so sometimes I can't stay awake, but I start waking up around 6:37. By the time it's 9, I'm up. And then, hey, what do you know? It's, you're getting your day started at 9 instead of 1 p.m. That may not sound like much to most of you who have to get up early, but it's amazing. And getting up at 7, 8, it's amazing. It's amazing. So anyway, that's the latest update on the health situation. That was 26 minutes, half an hour. I had a lot to talk about. But I would just advise those of you who may have looked at the example of Andrew. And by the way, by happy coincidence, the next Speakeasy segment is about Andrew Breitbart with Orson Bean and everybody else. That's kind of timely. But for those of you who feel that, like me, you're trapped on this hamster wheel and can't get off, I can tell you, for what it's worth, that you actually can get off. And if you feel like it's out of control, maybe you really should get off. If somebody had said that to me before I was knocked down by this, I would have said, well, that's nice, but I just can't do it. But as I said earlier, I was lucky to the degree that I have, I guess, enough cardio health so that my system basically just shut down without having to go through the heart attack thing. And I'm not an expert on this by any means. I'm not an expert on anything, but it doesn't stop me from talking about it. I've heard people say that once you have a heart attack, you are, from that point forward, for the rest of your shortened life, a cardiac patient. And so I'm not one of those. So, happy days. I'm eating much better, sleeping much better, getting a recumbent bike in here during the week and start getting a little exercise, because I don't get to exercise. It means I don't breathe. And I think if I started breathing and eating and sleeping, I might see significant improvements in my overall output. I think I would do a lot more in a lot less time. In any events, my friends, that's the story of your humble narrator's current state of health. Oh, and one more thing, since everybody's been commenting about it, and everybody commented about it before. Yes, the hair is considerably darker than it was. It wasn't supposed to be this dark. I wanted to get it a little bit darker. I had a professional do it. Normally I do it at home by myself. Ronald Reagan didn't dye his hair, and I don't dye my hair either. If it's good enough for Ron, it's good enough for me. It might have been a small earthquake. But seriously, for the same reason as Ronald Reagan, you remember when he had that brain surgery or something done on his head, and he didn't dye his hair, and all the new stuff came in like white? Well, if Ronald Reagan's hair was white, he would look a lot older than he did. And my feeling is, if it's good enough for Ronaldus Magnus, it's good enough for me. When I stopped taking all these medications, it was only 2 or 3. It wasn't like it was 50 of them. And recently, I can like kind of go in there and look at the roots kind of thing, and it's like it is pretty much white, and it was prematurely white. I mean, I started going gray at the temples in my late 30s. I'm 57. So, yes, I suppose I could tell you that I could just go ahead and let it go natural and be, everybody says, oh, a little gray at the temples looks great. I agree about the little gray at the temples. This was a little further than I wanted to go. I was actually kind of horrified, but what can you do? You can't undo it. But if I were to just stop it, it'd be white, white, white. And I had a pretty clear imagination of what that would look like, and it makes me look, I don't know, 57. And I'm just not going to do it. So I'll continue to deny it, and if anybody asks me, I'll deny it all the way home. But of course I do, and I have for 20 years now, like most people. And it's a big improvement. So y'all can kiss my butt if you don't like it. In any event, it does me a world of good. Lucy, look at the roots. Yeah. I saw Ronald Reagan with white hair, and man, he looks like an old man instead of the strapping movie star stud that everybody remembers him as, and that's the end of that discussion. So I forget which part this is. I think it's part 3. It might be part 4. of our astronomy show, but it's going to be the last part. We're going to be done with this because guess what? We are 5 shows away, I think after this, maybe 4 shows away from the spectacular 100th episode. And I have talked to Eisenfire, who, as you know, is the guardian outside the door there who stands there with a flaming sword. And I had a couple other people ask me about this too, Ian and some other folks. I think what we're going to do for the 100th episode is I think we're going to have a little audience in here. I think we're going to have a little audience, and then the audience can sit there, and they can look at that. Why does it do that little flash? See, that just shouldn't happen. I don't know why it does happen, but it does. I'll check it out. But yeah, we're going to do it here in the Stratosphere Lounge, and we will have people come in and have I don't know, 15, 20 of our closest friends, and we'll have a little party, and we'll do a little interview, and we can have a talk with some of our friends. See, that's just weird. And make a show out of it. So there you go. That's that, and now on to the astronomy show. But we are 4 or 5 shows away from our 100th episode, and during the 100th episode, we will also announce the location, the creation, and the constantly updated and improved Stratosphere Lounge database done by Eisenfire, the Tiemens, I think Cheryl, a bunch of other people. I don't remember exactly who, but a bunch of people really put together a linkable database of the 240 or 270 hours or whatever it is of this show. 170 hours, something insane. But anyway, it's in Sherman Oaks, and we'll start taking info at billwhittle.com. I think is probably the place to go and talk to Astrogirl. I don't think we'll have any big people, but we're going to make a party out of it, man. I feel like having a little fun. I've been tired of being tired, and I'm not so tired anymore. So anyway, there you go. Let's get back to the astronomy show, shall we? And I think just these last questions for the time. Matthew Lloyd says, and got a bunch of questions about this one, and I hadn't heard about it before I looked at the questions for this a while ago. Matthew Lloyd says, telescopes have been tracking fast radio bursts, FRBs, for years. Recently, scientists have noticed some FRBs that follow a mathematical pattern which would indicate intelligence. The FRB, let me just stop right there. Not necessarily. The FRBs appear to be coming from outside our solar system. If intelligent life form is using FRBs to send a message, scientists have concluded that they must be a Kardashev Type 2 civilization. These kind of things always make me laugh. Your thoughts on life, human or otherwise, in the vast expanse of space, and what an encounter with a Kardashev Type 2 civilization might look like or mean for humanity on Earth. Also, any sci-fi speculation on what it would mean or look like for us to develop the technology to become a Type 1, Type 2, or Type 3 civilization? Is it only a matter of time? I say let's push on directly to Type 3. These kind of things are interesting, and I don't mean to mock them. There's a lot to say here. And I'm going to include the next question from Robert Eric Rasmussen because they're kind of related. Thoughts on the Fermi Paradox, i.e., where is everybody? And Anthony Cazillo also says, which would be more profound, if the universe is teeming with life or if we're the only life in the universe? So let's talk about the FRBs first, and then we'll work our way down. I saw a little bit of data on the FRBs after I got the question, and I'm not spectacularly impressed. I'm not unimpressed, but I'm not like, wow, knock me over with a feather impressed. And the reason I'm not is because when you say that they were in like a series of mathematical bursts that were increasing at a certain rate or timed at a certain rate or so on, and that indicated intelligence, I think probably the best example of what I'm thinking might be an explanation, although an unexplained explanation at the present, is if you look at the Nautilus shell and you section a Nautilus shell, that has a regular mathematical precession too, but it's not intelligence. The Nautilus didn't say, I'm going to build this chamber this size and the next chamber this plus this factor, which keeps multiplying and therefore starts out very tiny and in a spiral becomes much bigger. That's a mathematical progression that biology follows but is not intelligent. And I suspect there might be some sort of physical explanation for something like that. I frankly think, look, if somebody wants to communicate with us, they're not going to set up a series of Nautilus kind of type, progressions. It's pretty clear. It's got to be I don't know if it was Arthur C. Clarke or somebody like that, but somebody said, you want to make the case, hey man, just transmit the first 20 prime numbers. That'll do it. They just come as beep, 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 like that. Doesn't matter what base language you're in. Doesn't matter if you had 5 little fingers on your hand by evolution's randomness or 4 or 8 or whatever. transmitting the series of prime numbers that's intelligence. But that's not what we're seeing there. So while I'm not ruling it out, I'm not impressed. It didn't like blow me away. As M2 Foster pointed out, when we first heard pulsars, click, 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 we thought, well, my God, they first called them LGMs, little green men, because what else could it be? So while I'm not unimpressed with FRBs, I don't think it's fraudulent, I don't think it's silly, and I don't think it's even likely. It doesn't have the feel of wow to me. Now, with that said, that may be exactly what they are. And it's strange how, the reason I guess I'm so kind of calm about this is because, first of all, I'm calm about everything these days compared to where I was before. But more importantly, I think it's because I've been disappointed so many times. So many people talk about, I've really gotten to be pretty good at this kind of Loch Ness Monster UFO kind of, practicality. And it's only because I've been disappointed so many times. When we first started as little junior astronomers, we were 15, 16 years old, and I was working in the planetarium, been there for several years, and this console operator, a guy who had been part of the Southern Cross Astronomical Society for years. He was a couple years older than me. He was probably 17, 18. I was 15, 16. He came back and shook me by the lapels one day and said, man, I was out in the Everglades last night and I saw them. And this is right around the time of Close Encounters of the Third Kind. And I'm like, man, for sure, can't wait. Because you want to believe it so much, right? You want to believe it. And he said, I was out in the Everglades, we saw them. It's like, you saw what? I said, we saw these things like in Close Encounters, these lights in the sky, but they were moving at right angles to each other and then just disappearing immediately off in space. Oh my God. So I said, well, all right, let's go look. So I went out there with him the next night or the next weekend. And as usual, you think, okay, first you're going to see him, and then it's going to be any second now, and then it's any hour now, and then, as the night's going by, and I thought, you know what, this is what's going to be what always happens. It's going to be, nothing's going to happen, and it's like you've got a rattle, you take it to a mechanic, and the car purrs. But just before sunrise, my friend was sitting there, and he started screaming, yelling, pointing these things out. I said, there they are. It's like, where? And I look up, and he's like, there, see it? It's like, buddy, that's a satellite. No, it is. It's a satellite. It's obviously a satellite. Just watch it. But look how it's not moving. It's moving in a linear direction. You may be getting a little autokinesis in there with your eyeballs drifting, but it's not doing anything. And it's like, is that what you saw before? Yeah. Okay. All right. I just have been disappointed so much that these kind of things don't impress me anymore. When there's evidence, that will impress me. Not just something, The FRBs to me seem to me like it's a picture of a wake, in the distance. There's a wake and a blurry object 7 miles away in the middle of Loch Ness. Okay. Then, okay. But right now it's just a wake and a blurry object. When the plesiosaur rears up, and people all around, 700 people with their little iPhones are shooting HD footage of this thing coming down and either eating children out of a school bus or waiting to be patted on the head, that's evidence. And that's when I'll be impressed, because I've had my heart broken too many times by all this stuff, starting with ancient astronauts and all that nonsense and all the damage that Leonard Nimoy did on In Search Of. Is this the answer to Bigfoot? Blah, 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 blah. Half an hour later, we don't know. Is this ancient astronauts? Half an hour later, we don't know. The Bermuda Triangle, half an hour later, we don't know. Yeah, well, guess what? These things can be deconstructed. I was the first person I've ever heard say, if it's a plesiosaur, why don't we see it 7 times an hour? Because we want to see it so much. I remember clearly having the ancient astronauts thing destroyed for me in a good way. Because you'd see these pictures of like the hummingbird on the plains of Nazca Plains in Peru. And you'd see these hummingbird shapes, and you'd see the hummingbird wings in these parallel lines, and then you'd see like lines of aircraft parked, and Eric von Däniken would say, were these in fact staging areas for ancient spacecraft in this ancient spaceport? And I thought, wow, I'll bet it is. And then somebody took a picture, and it turned out that the hummingbird wings that were used presumably to stage aircraft was 25 feet across. The guy stood in the middle of it. He could walk across it in 4 or 5 steps, 6 steps, something like that. And it's like, you're just being lied to. They're just lying to you. And that pretty much knocked the ancient astronaut story out of the water for me. And speaking of out of the water, I remember as if it were yesterday when I was like really into the Bermuda Triangle, because you want mysteries. Everybody wants mysteries. I'm not, I'm human too. I want mysteries like everybody else. I just, hey, Mike, you know what? They have it set up now so that if your phone rings, your computer rings, and I don't want that. And somebody tell me how to turn that off. Anyway, Bermuda Triangle. Oh, these flights disappeared. Oh, well, that's never happened before. Oh, a ship disappeared. The Marine Sulphur Queen, and the flight of Avengers. And what could possibly explain it except an underground vortex, a magnetic vortex, or maybe it's a wormhole, or maybe it's methane gas being released. And then somebody just killed it. They just shot it dead in the same way I think I shoot the Loch Ness Monster dead. They said, if you take an area the size of the Bermuda Triangle and place it anywhere over the world's trade routes, you will come up with the same number of unexplained disappearances. Really? Yep. That was the end of that. I was done after that. I don't know anything about these Kardashev-type civilizations. I suspect they've got to do with this, but I do want to comment on something that the Kardashev-type civilizations remind me of, and that's the Drake equation. For those of you who don't remember, astronomer named Drake put together this famous equation that was to determine the number of civilizations in the universe. And it was very, very, very sensible and very logical. And I was so impressed when I heard it in mid-'70s, early 70s, somewhere around there, around the time we sent the Arecibo radio message out. And it's like, if the number of planets in the universe is determined by, the number of stars in the galaxy, and then the number of stars times the number of, what percentage of stars have habitable planets? What percentage of habitable planets are in the life zone? What percentage of planets in the life zone develop life? What percentage of planets that develop life develop intelligent life? What percentage of intelligent life develops technological life? Multiplied by how long this civilization will survive in the age of atomic weapons, and all the rest of this drivel. And it sounded so sensible and so rational and so reasonable to me, and it was like you came up with a number that was anywhere between 100,000 and 100 million or something like that, right? And I remember being so impressed as a kid, and I wish I'd love to tell you this was me, but somebody not too long ago said the Drake equation was the end of science. It was the end of science because here was an equation where you had all these variables and no evidence. And that's so true. It's so true. I didn't even see it as a kid. I didn't see it through most of my life until finally somebody smarter than me said, you've got this incredible, well thought out, rational, logical equation that has like 12 variables or something like this. That's going to give you a number. These 12 variables equals the number of intelligent civilizations and intelligent technological civilizations in the galaxy or the universe or whatever. And you see all this stuff, and the guy pointed out, but we have no data. We have data on the number of stars in the galaxy. This is before any of the exoplanet research. We don't have any data on the number of planets. And everything downstream of that was boiled out of the number of planets in the life zone, number of planets that develop life. And we don't have any idea, zero idea. It's kind of like having it's like you've got 12 significant figures multiplied by a number with one significant figure, and all the rest of that stuff is hooey. And it's one of these things that's so fascinating to me from a political point of view, because it deals with human nature, and it deals with the madness of crowds, and it deals with the fact that thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of people, millions of people, bought into this thing. Matt J. Harris in the comment section just said the Drake equation shows you what variables you should be looking for. I agree, that's interesting, but there's no data. It's useless. We didn't have any data of the upstream elements, and all of the stuff downstream was nuts. And but it was treated like science, but it's not science. He might as well have asked, and the number of gingerbread houses produced by and the number of civilizations destroyed by flying monkeys, and that's going to be a percentage of it's ridiculous. So when people start speculating about different types of civilizations, I'm not trying to put Kardashev in the same box, but I am becoming more and more and more and more alarmed and concerned at how constricted the thinking of people who claim to be out-of-the-box thinkers really is. We don't know what we don't know. We don't know what we don't know. And so much of this stuff is stuff that we don't know. These are known unknowns. There are unknown unknowns in any number of things out there. They're just completely outside the box. And I'm not saying it's not useful. I'm not saying it's not good. I'm just saying I'm not impressed by it in the way that I used to be. And that's maybe me getting cynical, or as I said on the Speakeasy show, which I'm very happy with, why are Republicans so old? Well, because it takes a while to beat the stupid out of people. And I've had the stupid beaten out of me in terms of this kind of wishful thinking fulfillment. So, look, does that mean the FRBs are not signs of intelligence? It does not mean that. That is one explanation for them. If there is no other explanation, then that's the most likely explanation until it's either proven, or until proven by finding more of a signal inside these things, or somebody comes up with another natural reason for why these things are transmitting at these frequencies and these rates. As far as this Kardashev Type 2 civilization, I think it sounds great, and it's a useful construct, but it is primate intelligence construct, and we don't know what we don't know in terms of life, intelligent life, technological life. Maybe they communicate through scent. Who knows? I'm just saying we have to be careful about this. We have to be careful on building assumptions about these things. This is the thing that's driven me to conservatism. There's so many assumptions of progressives. They just make assumptions. Yes, of course, everybody will get up in the morning at 4 o'clock in the morning to take care of the community cow that doesn't belong to anybody, because we're all true believers, and we're intellectuals, and we're learned university students, and we hate money because we don't have any. So, of course, everybody will get up and we'll make new men and new people. I just don't believe it anymore. And I'm happy that I don't believe it anymore. So let's get to the Fermi Paradox, which is the idea that where is everybody? If there's this many stars and this many planets, and we're finding more and more planets every day, and they're becoming a lot more common than I ever was, I think in a previous segment or the one before this, certainly part of the astronomy show. When I was working in the planetarium, 75, 76, there was some speculation that Barnard's star might in fact have one, if not two, planets around it. We didn't have the evidence. There was just a little bit of a wobble, I think. Well, now we've got thousands of them. So where's the intelligence? I think I said before that the moon is what makes this our civilization, our technological civilization is here because of the moon. Without the moon, we take asteroid impacts that basically reset the evolutionary clock every 20 million years, every 5 million years. The moon not only takes impacts that in terms of the moon getting hit by things, but as I said before, there's an incredible little flash animation thing, great little flash program, where you could launch asteroids into the Earth-Moon system, and this would show you how the moon just accelerates them out, blocks them, sends them in. Incredible how much pain the moon takes on our behalf, and that's why it's so cratered. And the moon is the core of the Earth. A friend of mine named Brent Regan pointed out that one of the things that the moon did when the proto-Earth, which was about the size of Earth, was moving along, Earth 1, and a planet that's about the size of Mars has been called Orpheus and a bunch of other names, hits the Earth at a glancing angle. The two planets fuse, and the core of the Earth gets knocked out, and all the silicates and all this other stuff. But he was saying, if you don't have this kind of freak accident that happens in just the right way, does the planet's mantle get scrambled in that way? In other words, if that hadn't happened, would all of the iron be at the center of the Earth instead of in the hills where we can get it and have an Iron Age? Would all the copper be at the center of the Earth? Would we have ever had a Bronze Age if this impact hadn't happened and mixed up the crust? It's an interesting idea. But the moon protects us long enough for intelligence to arise, and then technology. And by the way, if the dolphins were as intelligent as people say they are, maybe they are, it's not going to help out very many people who are, forget about in the next solar system, it was not going to help people who are 100 feet inland if they can't communicate because they don't have technology, because they got flippers and they're at sea, so they can't build things. What good does it do? So look, my feeling about the intelligent life in the universe is it is without question far scarcer than I had hoped it would be when I was a strapping young lad. I've never been a strapping young lad. It's far scarcer than I thought it would be when I was a skinny geek astronomer kid. Oh, I have to pull out my skinny geek astronomer picture. I'm sorry. I know it's a little awkward for me to have to go back. But hey, how do we have this conversation talking about planetarium and all this other stuff without me finding this thing? I got to go a little bit back. I know I posted it a while ago, and see if I can find one or two of these things here. And you know what? I probably shouldn't even do this. It's just kind of ridiculous to search like this, especially since the thing's not even coming out. To hell with it. Yeah, you don't need the dead air. We'll worry about it later. But anyway, there I was, a geeky little astronomy kid, and I believed in all this stuff, and I don't anymore. So, do I think there is intelligent technological life in the universe? Categorically, I do, because the numbers are just so vast. When you've got the number of star systems in the galaxy, number of galaxies in the universe, the chance of all of these conditions being replicated is, it's got to be pretty near 100%. There will be other planets out there. I think life is everywhere. I think we're going to find life in the solar system. I think there's a 50-50 chance of us finding life, non-human life, in the solar system. I think life is scattered throughout the universe. I wouldn't be surprised if virtually all of these planets throughout the universe have some form of life on it. But that's not intelligent life. And that's not technological intelligent life. I think that's much rarer. I think it's rarer because it needs more time, and I think most planets don't get that time because they don't have a moon to protect them. But some planets, some small number of planets, will have a moon in just the right place and just the right size, be a form of a double planet like ours, and then there's no reason why it shouldn't happen. So there you go. So, yes, I don't think the universe is empty, but I don't think it's anything like as full as I thought it would be. Moving on here, Michael Northcott says, what do you think of Bill Gates' rope hypothesis of physics, which intends to explain things such as gravity, quantum entanglement, the true nature of waves, etc., by saying that every particle is connected to every other particle and all waves are merely vibrations along these ropes? It seems to me as though it might be a natural connection to string theory and perhaps might also get rid of all this dark matter, dark energy nonsense. I like this question a lot because I don't know anything about it, but I know a little bit about a little bit. Somebody once described string theory as 21st century, late 21st century science that we're trying to grasp at given our limited understanding. I love that description. Somebody said that about the Apollo landings too. I think it was one of the Apollo astronauts said, look, we went to the moon in 1960. We really weren't prepared to go until probably the year 2000. We just reached into the future and did it. We just did it. We didn't have the computers. We didn't have the technology. We didn't have anything, but we just did it. We found a way. So I think this idea of string theory is interesting to me only because when you start talking about strings vibrating in 11 dimensions, we talked in previous segments of the astronomy show about the multidimensional aspect and this guy called Imagining the 10th Dimension on YouTube, and he's fantastic. But the reason I wanted to take this question is because while I was putting down a lot of things lately about this whole thing about human intellect and and our propensity to think we know what we know, the fact of the matter is what we accomplish with these little cantaloupe-size hemispheres of gray jelly is astonishing. It's astonishing. The fact that we're having this conversation at all, the internet and electricity, cameras, it's astonishing. Astonishing. And for us to be able to take such limited resources in terms of connections and neurons and just such limited hardware, I mean, we really are, we're trying to produce, Toy Story on TRS-80s. I mean, we're just pushing, and it's just out of sheer desire and persistence and grit, intellectual grit, that we're able to do these things. It's so impressive to me. It's so impressive to me what we're capable of doing intellectually. I think I came down pretty hard on Einstein for his views on politics, rightfully so. He doesn't know anything about politics. He doesn't know anything about politics, and he's not a person to ask about politics. However, I think relativity is the greatest single intellectual achievement in the history of the world. And for a man in a patent office, a young man in his early 20s, to be sitting in a patent office in Bern, Switzerland, and determine how the universe works because he was bored. He didn't have experiments. He didn't have, the superconducting supercollider. He didn't have it. He just bored. He was bored in the patent office in Bern, Switzerland, and he just daydreamed. And some of his daydreams were, if I'm traveling, a car is moving at the speed of the light, and I turn on my headlights, what happens? Or if I'm in an elevator that's accelerating at 1G, what happens? And he just thought it through. It's astonishing. It's astonishing. And Einstein is a good example of a guy who absolutely had some kind of serious. I think they studied his brain and found that the convolutions on his cerebral cortex were significantly more advanced. So if you add 20, 25%, 30%, 50% processing power to the human brain, it's amazing what you can do. And then the question becomes, what do you do if you have 50 times the processing power of the human brain, which is not hard for me to imagine. And when we come to some of our political opponents, in fact, it's hard for me to imagine 100 times that kind of mental ability is pretty straightforward. So anyway, I don't know much about the rope superstring theory other than to say the idea that the universe is encoiled in 11 dimensions that exhibit themselves through our third dimension as a series of infinitely small strings vibrating through the 11th dimension. It's just weird enough to sound true to me. It's got that kind of ring of truth. And when I say ring of truth, it's that kind of monkey, looking at the it's looking at the shadows on the back of the cave true. It's amazing. It's amazing what we can do. Absolutely amazing through just sheer determination and striving. And, by the way, cooperation and persistence. Writing things down. The reason we have the internet is not because somebody invented the internet, although he did save the world from global warming. The reason we have the internet is because there's been millions and millions and millions and millions of engineers operating for almost a century. Well, certainly since 45 with Turing's machine, right? So half a century, 60 years, something like that. And and I watched it. We talked earlier about the golden age of astronomy, how if you lived before when I grew up, you died without seeing all the results of these space probes and the Hubble Space Telescope. And if you were born after they were finished, you had them all your life. You never got them revealed to you. We're about to have this New Horizons mission to Pluto. That will be the end of the golden age of astronomy, because by that point, that'll be as fine a button as the end. The first planetary mission, one of the Mariner missions, Mariner 4, I guess, was the beginning of it, and the end of it is we get a look at Pluto. Now we've seen everything in the solar system, and now it's just mopping up. But these kind of things are just like that. They're incredible opportunities. I was talking about the computing age. I saw it. I got it. My first computer was an Apple IIe, but the first computer I ever saw in operation, personal computer, was a TRS-80, and the first computer I ever used was the Coral Gables Senior High School computer that had a modem that went into a rubber socket and printed out green and white lines of output, and I played the Star Trek game on that in 1976, 1977. You watch it spit itself out as like a Romulan battlecruiser in section D. It fires its disruptors. Hit on shield number 4. Shield number 4 now to 44%. What are your orders, Captain? 1. Fire photon torpedoes. Photon torpedoes fired. Not even a monitor. Miss. The Klingon captain has fired his disruptors. I was fascinated. I was so impressed. I was so blown away by talking to this intellect. Matter of fact, the guy who worked at our school, the computer guy named Tom. Tom would hold the old style receiver up to his head that was talking to the mainframe in downtown, wherever this thing was, and you could hear the typical kind of dial-up. You'd hear that kind of dial-up sound, and he figured out that if you could hiss into the speaker on the telephone, the thing be going, and you go, ooh, and then it would respond to you. It would give you some kind of response back. It's gibberish, but it was cool. So I saw it. The first editing system I bought, it cost about, $16,000. It produced video at 340 by 230 resolution. And in order to make that editing system work in 1993, we had to buy 2 Maxtor Panther drives. They were 1 gigabyte drives. They were each one of them the size of a toaster. And they cost $4,000 or $5,000 each for the 1 gigabyte drive, and we were so impressed. When I bought my Apple IIe, I decided to splurge and live large. I got the 64K version, not the 48K. That's how much RAM it had. Not 64 megs, 64 kilobytes of RAM. That was the RAM on the Apple IIe. So, incremental improvements over a large time base and over a wide pyramid of experience produces a, 500 kilobyte floppy drive, and then a 1 megabyte hard drive, and then a 10 megabyte hard drive, then a 100 megabyte hard drive, and then a gigabyte hard drive, and then a 2 gigabyte hard drive, and then a 10 gigabyte hard drive, and then a 50 gigabyte hard drive, and then just watch it happen. Gets better and better, faster and faster, smaller and smaller, and cheaper and cheaper. It's absolutely astonishing. Video toaster, bless you, Silent Gloves. Yes, the video toaster was awesome. The video, there's a whole bunch of people that were like video toaster people. It was a little video box that did special effects, and I think the first version of Lightwave 3D was built into it. And the toaster was just a personal switching system. It was really, really cool. I missed the toaster. The toaster was awesome. It was a cool little box. Let's see what's next. Karsten Mueller says, plenty of unknown in our universe and galaxy for that matter. Do you think the human brain will ever have the capability of understanding half of it? No. No. We'll be lucky if we ever understand 100 billionth of it. This is the point. We can't understand it. We can make models that give us predictive value, which is lovely, lovely, and impressive. And I just got over saying how impressive it is. But the difference between understanding the universe and what we think we understand about the universe is the difference between a map of Texas and Texas. Texas is composed of pebbles and bits of dirt and scorpions, and none of them are in the same place at the same time, and tumbleweeds that are blowing, and none of those positions are the same. And frankly, when you get right down to it, you get each one of these grains of sand and each one of these scorpions is made up of atoms and molecules, and we don't know their position or status. And then when you get into the atoms and molecules of each one of these things, those things are moving around and all this other stuff. So we don't understand it. Now, fortunately, there are patterns, and if there weren't patterns, we couldn't understand anything. Patterns are great, and we can look at patterns and we get smarter, and I think this is a noble, it's not only a noble quest, it's the noble quest. The most noble thing we do as a species is try to understand things. I'm just in a place in my life where I want to make people aware of the fact that we have got to be careful about this arrogance of thinking that we know what we don't. We don't know. We know so little. And the reason I am so on this jihad now is because, which is a personal struggle for internal improvement, is because it's the arrogance of thinking that we know that prevents us from asking the kind of questions that get us more knowledge. You only get smarter when you realize you don't know anything, when things that don't make sense. I mean, I talked about my personal health at the beginning of this episode for half an hour. I had a number of symptoms that I didn't connect, and neither did any of my physicians. And I went to 3 or 4. And no one ever said to me, you shouldn't be taking this Adderall until we find out whether or not you've got Addison's disease. No one ever said that to me. No one ever said to me, hey, you've been coming in and complaining about tired for 6 years now. Maybe there's something systemically wrong with you. No one ever said that to me either, ever, until I found this nutritionist. So that's all I'm saying. I just think we need to be a little more careful. The fact that we understand anything is an incredible deal. And as we talked about, I think, in the first one of these astronomy things, there's some evidence and some math and some interesting theory that says that the more sophisticated we become as observers, the more sophisticated the universe has to become to be observed. So if that's the case, that's a tail you can never catch, right? The more you spin around trying to bite that tail, the smarter you get, the more intelligent you get, the more sophisticated instruments you have. The universe just takes another step away from you. Okay, fantastic. You can ask a more pointed question with a more sensitive instrument. Now the universe is going to force itself to become more complex now. These probability waves on the quantum level are going to get compressed down to the quantum level, and the universe will become more complex as we ask more complex questions of it. I actually have a sense that's true. I don't know why. It's just a hunch. People dismiss hunches, but maybe that hunch is, 4 petabytes of processing power, something like that, in the human brain, this hunk of jelly. Maybe a hunch is that 4 petabytes functioning on a level that we call a subconscious level that is telling us something. Now, that may sound like believing in indigo auras, but I don't see it that way. A hunch is a hunch. Hunch is cool. We get a lot from hunches. Hunches are deep processing of many different kinds of information outside of the problem. That famous story about the guy who developed the structure of benzene, wrestling with how that atom looked as a very complex molecule, not atom. And they were trying to figure out the structure of it, and he couldn't figure it out. He's just thinking about it all the time. Finally, he goes to bed and has a dream about a snake biting its tail and rolling down the road. And he said, It's a ring. It's a ring. Yeah. He knew it. His brain knew that it was a ring structure, but he was so busy processing data that he couldn't look at the data internally in his head. He's trying to process all this data. He couldn't look at it. All the information he needed to come to the correct conclusion was there. He was just too busy chasing the processing of it. Finally, he goes to sleep, and his subconscious says, hey, it's a ring. How can I convince you of a ring? What's a ring? Well, you think it's a long line. So let's take something that's like a long line, like a snake, and have it curl around, bite its tail, and roll down the street. It's a ring. It's a hoop. The benzene ring. That's interesting to me. It's very interesting to me. Isaac Tiemens asks a question. What is the speed of light in the 11th dimension? I don't know. I don't live there, although I may. But if I had to guess, Isaac, I'd say the speed of light in the 11th dimension is 186,282 miles per second in a vacuum. That's what I would say. We talked in one of these earlier segments about this great program, free program called Celestia, which I cannot recommend highly enough. And one of the things you can do, at least in the Mac version of Celestia, is fly through the solar system at the speed of light. And when you move through the solar system at the speed of light, you realize how slow the speed of light really is. It takes about 20 minutes to go through the Jovian system at the speed of light. Is that right? Yeah, about 20 minutes. To go from one end of it to another. That's just Jupiter and its moons. It's a mini solar system out there. And you watch them orbit slowly changing. And as you get close to them, it kind of does this kind of, but it's not very fast. And the reason I bring this up again is because if all information moves at the speed of light, then you realize that information is molasses that's being poured out of a jug on a cold day. And it takes a while to get through this stuff. It's not instantaneous. Nothing like instantaneous. You got in your warp ship, and it's self-obvious. I mean, everybody knows it, but it's still kind of amazing. You get in your warp drive ship and you turn it on. You go to warp factor 1. We are traveling at the speed of light, ladies and gentlemen. We're moving at the speed of light. We're moving as fast as anything has ever moved before. Let's set sail for the nearest star, and we'll be there in 4.5 years. 4.5 years. That's the nearest star. So the speed of light is fascinating. It's fascinating that information is not instantaneous. Why isn't it? Why is light inhibited? Why is it not? Why does it move at a speed? I mean, so E equals mc squared, right? That's the single definitive piece of human thinking is E equals mc squared. Energy equals mass times the speed of light squared. Energy is liberated. Enormous amounts of energy are liberated from very tiny amounts of matter because matter is multiplied by the speed of light, which is a very high number, squared. Which leads you to the inverse conclusion that matter is essentially condensed energy. It's a condensation of energy that exists in a stable form, and the matter can be liberated into energy, and the amount of energy you get out of matter is an enormous amount of energy out of a very, very small amount of matter. If you completely eliminate it, it's amazing how much energy you can get out of a tiny, tiny particle of matter. So, if energy is eliminated or released from this process of matter and antimatter coming together, you get this burst of energy. Why does energy have to move at a speed? You would think energy would be infinitely fast. You would think, what's slowing light down? That's a better way to put it. Sometimes this is the only thing I'm actually good at, is asking questions the right way. So if light is massless, what's slowing it down? We think 186,000 miles an hour. God, that's fast. It is fast compared to walking. But what is slowing it down? Why isn't it gone? Why isn't it instantaneous? And if it's not instantaneous, why is it 186,282 miles a second? Why isn't it 722,946 miles a second? Why isn't it 36,300 miles a second? What is slowing it down? What is holding it to that speed? It's built into the structure of space-time. There's no question about that. Why? The entire electromagnetic spectrum moves at that speed. Why? These are the questions that are interesting to me. Nobody asks these kind of questions. I don't hear them asked anyway. I don't hear anybody ask this. I'm sure there are theoretical physicists who do ask these kind of questions and have used them as a launching pad for further research. I just don't talk to those people. But just as a guy who's an astronomical layman, why is light slowed down? And why is it slowed down to the rate at which it's slowed down? Why isn't it faster? Why isn't it slower? That's interesting to me. Ted Yantis says, what are your thoughts on the sun cycles and activity being the major contributor of climate change and how this makes man-made pollution a very, very small part of it? My feelings on this are it's almost certainly true. The correlation to solar activity is a much better correlation than the correlation to carbon levels. And there are other variables that we don't know about. And now we're back to what I was talking about just a minute ago about this arrogance of assuming that we know things. Look, we have to assume that we know things. This is called heuristics. The HAL computer and that my buddy Dave Bowman here is looking at right now, the HAL 9000 is heuristically programmed analog computer, I think it was. Heuristics are lessons. They're little building blocks of information and wisdom almost. A heuristic might be if something's glowing red, don't touch it. Because if you touch a red-hot stove or a red-hot iron or something, you only have to do that once. You don't have to relearn that glowing red is hot every time. That's a heuristic. You can build upon that. If you don't have heuristics, you can't do anything. There's no language, there's no thought, there's no nothing. But on some level, we should be challenging some of these heuristics. And this idea that carbon is driving climate change is a heuristic that has been gobbled up by people who call themselves scientists. And when they find the data doesn't match their computer models, instead of changing the computer models, they change the data. They have a map about the coastline. They're sailing at sea. They got a chart, and their chart says, well, there should be a river delta here. They go outside and they look. There's no river delta. There's a rocky coast. They look at the map. They look at the coastline, and they think the coastline is wrong. That's the arrogance of modern so-called scientists. This is why I'm so down on this issue. It doesn't match. Doesn't work. And if you have to fake the data, what does that tell you? I've got a new firewall coming out about this idea politically. If you have to fake evidence that there's gang rapes on college campuses, if you have to fake evidence that Sarah Silverman gets paid less than a male comedian, if you have to fake evidence about the Tea Party being racist by making racist billboards and sending them to Tea Party events, then the fact that you have to construct evidence is in fact evidence that you don't have any evidence, right? So there you go. Yeah, I think it's definitely closely related to the sun. Because these carbon things in the atmosphere, all of these carbon models are not based on the carbon. They're even the people backing man-made global warming aren't saying that it's the carbon dioxide that's causing the warming. They're saying the increase of carbon dioxide is affecting the water vapor. Water vapor does the heavy lifting. So little forcing is little changes of one thing move a bigger variable, and that makes the big change. So we have a trim tab flies the control surface that actually flies the airplane. Little load controls the device that puts the big load on. But it doesn't match, and it doesn't work. And for people to just blindly assert that it isn't science anymore. Heuristically programmed algorithmic computer, thank you. Binary, it wasn't analog. I thought that sounded wrong. Algorithmic computer, thank you. Algorithmic computers named after Al Gore. Okay, so moving on here. Patrick Dillon says, what do you make of the oscillating universe theory? Could the universe stop expanding at some time and start collapsing, a.k.a. the Big Crunch, and then trigger a new Big Bang? Can the cycle go on indefinitely? Infinitely, sorry. So the idea is there's a Big Bang. Lots of good evidence that there was a Big Bang. Lots and lots and lots of good evidence. The question is there enough mass to slow this expansion down and then bring it back together again so it collapses? And once it collapses, what happens next? Does it just go bang again? Or is there not enough mass, in which case the universe just keeps expanding until it cools to zero? I forget which way it's looking. I kind of think that it's looking right now that it's not enough mass to bring it back together, but I don't remember if that's true or not. Let's say that it does, though. Let's say that the universe does stop expanding and then starts to contract. And then it eventually, over another 15, 20 billion years or whatever it takes, all these galaxies which have been expanding now start to contract. And they form a point infinitely dense, infinitely hot, and infinitely small. And at that point, poof, there's another Big Bang, and the whole thing goes off again, either with the same laws of physics or with completely different laws of physics. It's got a nice feel to it, feels right. Does that mean it's right? No. A lot of times things feel right and they're not right, but then again, that might be that 4 petabytes of processing functioning below the level of my CPU. That may be a pattern in the data that I'm not able to determine by looking at it serially. It may be a pattern that I may be able to access in parallel as a hunch. So I have a feeling it's true. Doesn't mean it's true. It just seems right. If that's the case, then the universe is like a reciprocating engine. It's bang, 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 bang. And if it's been going on forever, then there's a world where we are, in fact, exactly the same, except we all have goatees, including the women, because even though that's unlikely to the extreme, if you have infinity and eternity, everything will happen an infinite number of times. This is where the monkey brain stops. Monkey brain can't follow it. We don't understand infinity or eternity, can't process those things. We can estimate them, and we can use them in equations, and we can think we understand it, but we don't understand eternity, and we don't understand infinity. Because if we did, we'd understand that right this very second there's a Stratosphere lounge going on someplace, either in space or time, and I'm wearing a goatee, and so are you. And then there's another universe where I'm not wearing the goatee, but I have a lovely unicorn horn and a beautiful purple mane coming out of the back. That's infinity and eternity. And it doesn't seem like it could possibly be true, but that's because I don't have the brain power to understand these things. Richard Browd asks, are you into amateur astronomy? Probably should have taken that one first. After, 5 hours, 6, 7, 8 hours of talking about it, the answer is yes. I didn't mean to be laughing at you, Richard. I'm laughing at myself for the placement of that question. I probably should have put that first. He goes on to say, these days most near-Earth excursions by asteroids are found by these talented amateurs. I think this proves there is still very valuable work being done in science away from big universities and government grants. There is less pressure to bend to the consensus, but there's a lot more motivation to do original work. Your thoughts? I couldn't agree more. I'm so proud of it. Amateur astronomy is the giant parallel processing pool of highly observable events. Somebody please write that down and send it back to me. That's what it is, right? Yet hundreds of thousands, if not, millions certainly, if not maybe tens or even hundreds of millions of amateur astronomers out there in the world who are observing things that are large enough to be observed with a naked eye, telescopes, small telescopes, binoculars, that kind of thing. And when you have hundreds of millions of people looking at things, or tens of millions of people, then you start to see things that the big universities can't because they're not throwing as wide a net. They're throwing a deeper net, but not as wide. So yes, whenever anybody using a little telescope, a 10-inch telescope or something, tracks a new asteroid and able to get the orbit worked out based on the appearance of this thing across the stars, it's not something you have time to do with big telescopes like the Hubble. You need lots and lots and lots of little telescopes looking everywhere, and it's wonderful, and it's democratic, and it's cool, and it's something to be proud of. I don't know if I've told this story before. I don't know if I told it in this segment before. I didn't tell it in this episode before. That much I do remember in the midst of my cortisol deficiency. I had forgotten the story until I saw my old friend Phil Trick. Phil, if you're watching, hi. And you and Bobby, as you know, changed my life. Phil Trick gave me a moral core. He was really a dad I didn't have. He worked at the Miami Planetarium with us. It had an enormous effect on me, enormous. But I'd forgotten this story because I actually do have a kind of a fundamental humility, believe it or not. I'm certainly extremely humble for a guy who looks this good. Let's just put it that way. It's so funny. Anyway, back when I was a skinny, pimply little science astronomy geek, Phil reminded me of this. We were at the Southern Cross Observatory. I'd been working at the planetarium for probably a year, maybe not even that long. I was 14 years old, I think. And like any major city, there was a tremendous amount of light pollution. So as it started to get dark, you never got a really dark sky. But as the sky got darker, needless to say, the brightest star in the sky is the first star you see if you know where to look, and then you get dimmer stars and dimmer stars and dimmer stars. And so we were at the point where we could probably see first magnitude stars. That meant if you were really paying attention, you might see 6 or 7, 8 stars up there. It was still pretty light out. And I was looking up. I was 14. I just got started, but I knew my astronomy. I really did. And I was looking up, and I thought, well, wait a minute. No, hold on. Now, everything's wrong now. I just had this thought internally. Everything's wrong because I thought that was Deneb, and I thought that was Altair, and I thought that was Vega, but that star's there, and that doesn't make any sense. So I got to be wrong, and I got to figure out where did I make a mistake? And I kept looking. I said, no, that is Vega, and that is Deneb, and that is Altair. They're in the right space, they're the right colors, the right relative brightness, and over there's Arcturus. And so what is that star that's causing me all this trouble? And I pointed it out to Phil, and Phil looked up, he said, I don't know. And he got on the phone, and he called the Smithsonian, because Phil knew these kind of things. And he called the Smithsonian Observatory, and I don't know if he left a message or something. It was 1973 or 74. Turns out it was a supernova. And I was the second person to see it on the eastern seaboard. I think somebody in Boston saw it before I did, and we were only beaten out by something like 200,000 amateur astronomers in Asia and Japan who were looking at it when it went off. But it was kind of heads-up ball for me, and I was pretty proud of the fact. I'd utterly forgotten about it for 40 years until Phil pointed it out to me a little less than a year ago, reminded me of it. I'd just completely forgotten that it happened. But it was pretty cool. I mean, it was a real kind of, on one level I was in the right place at the right time. I was looking up at the sky and at sunset on the eastern coast. And there was no internet then. There was no big announcement. There was no way to know about something like this. But it turns out there was a supernova in Cygnus. And I think you can see the remnant of it today. It's been 30, 40 years since that thing blew up, and there's a neat little planetary nebula where that used to be. But I was the second person in America to see it. And I saw it while it was still damn near broad daylight out there. And it was something to be proud of. That's the power of amateur astronomy. You get a bunch of fired up people looking at things, and you never know what's going to happen. JT O'Connell asked a question that's a real specific answer. Sorry, I got a little tickle cough here. I think I'm going to mention this earlier too. What is the best way you've ever seen to understand the scale distance between stars and planets and so forth? And can we really intuit the minuteness of our own apparently massive environment? I don't want to repeat what I said earlier. First of all, look at Powers of 10. It's a fantastic video. They did it back in the 60s or early 70s, and then they redid it. Powers of 10, you just keep zooming out and then zooming in on little frames that are 10 times bigger than the last frame. But there's also something, if somebody could post maybe, I don't know if you want to post it on Facebook or something on the Facebook post for today's show, there is a side-scrolling thing that shows you the scale of the solar system. It shows you, here's the sun, and it's so many pixels tall, and then you scroll with your mouse, scroll, and you see these little, reference bars going by, reference bars, you're scrolling, it seems like you're scrolling forever. Here's 1 pixel. There's Mercury. Scroll. Here's 20 pixels, that's Venus. Scroll. Here's another 21 pixels, that's Earth. And every single time you scroll, it's getting further and further and further. And then they start sending signposts like, keep going, Yeah, I got a long way to go. And by the time you get to Mars, and then Jupiter, finally Jupiter is, I don't know, 50 pixels tall or something like that. But it's taking you 100 years to scroll past these things, and it's terrific. And you realize there is no solar system. There is no solar system. There's the sun and minute debris, specks. It's astonishing. It's really good. Let's see here. Dan Ramsey says, it seems that in every single story nowadays about exoplanets, comets, ice on the moon, and just general space exploration, there's a mandatory paragraph or two discussing the potential presence of life or the building blocks of life or conditions being ideal for the emergence of life. This strikes me as the scientific equivalent of, you may already have won $1 million. Do you agree, or do you think science journalists are just trying to add sizzle to what may be a dry topic? I think they are trying to add sizzle, but I think the sizzle is appropriate. I mean, life is the jackpot, right? That's the reason we go to other planets, and the reason we do this. We want to see if anybody's out there. We want to talk to somebody. We want to pick up a bug or a piece of moss that is unlike anything that's ever been seen before. It's not got our DNA. It's different, alien life form. So that's something to ring the bell about, and I don't mind them ringing the bell. I'm happy about it. But I had a thought about this that I never had until this exact instant, and that's this. When I was a lad, in 1973, you're talking about the Drake equation, and there might be water on Mars, perhaps, kind of thing. And I realized just now that when life is announced in the solar system somewhere, and I suspect there's a good chance I'll live to see it, maybe not. But if I had to bet, I would. I would say I would. It's going to be anticlimactic, because it's like any showman knows, you don't just dribble the cast out there. You don't just, when we did Speakeasy, just as an example of what I'm talking about, when we shot Speakeasy in a 100-seat theater and the audience is filing in, we didn't have the guests just kind of come out and sit on the couch. We let the audience come in, and when the audience was in and when everybody's really fired up, then we sent a guy out to get everybody pumped, and I came out, and then I brought everybody out. But it was an entrance. It's show business. It's exciting. And intelligent life, forget intelligent life. Life is being dribbled out over so many little announcements. Well, we think we may have seen something on the Viking lander, but yeah, probably not. Well, something here that might be water on Mars, but maybe not. Well, it turns out it looks like it could very likely be water. And then 10 years of likely be water. Yes, it's definitely water. Okay, great. Well, maybe perhaps there might be some form of it's like it's getting dribbled out over such a long period of time. They're taking all the drama out of it. I wish I could have just come out and said, hey, in 1973, hey, guess what? We found it. And until then, until we got it, be quiet. Look, I don't blame them. I'm proud of them, and obviously proud of them. Anytime you make any kind of incremental discovery, a little bacteria on this meteorite, is that a bacteria? Maybe. Looks like a bacteria, but maybe it isn't. Anyway, you get the idea, right? So I don't mind them saying you might just have won $1 million, because you may have just won $1 million. It's just like the end of In Search Of. I'd like some answers and less speculation, please. 3 to go. Our friend Cheryl Tomey says, if extraterrestrials came to Earth and offered you a trip to their planet, but their government was a totalitarian one, would you go? Which would hold the superior position, your deep-seated moral and ethical ideals or your love of space and adventure? I'll answer the question as it was asked. If I was offered a trip to their planet, their totalitarian planet, of course I'd take it. Of course I'd take it. I'd take it because I'd want to see it. Now, the deeper question is, if they said, would you like to come to our planet, and then we can use you to enslave humans so that you can work in our underground sugar caves? Despite the fact that I try to say this as often as I possibly can, I'd like to remind our alien overlords, our insect overlords, that as a trusted member of the media, I can be useful in rounding up other humans to serve in their underground sugar caves. That's where I would draw the line. In other words, would I put myself into a totalitarian system to see it? Absolutely. Even if it meant, maybe I'll end up in a cage. I don't know. It'd be worth the trip. But would I do it at the expense of my country or my fellow humans or my fellow man? No, I wouldn't. I would stay home. There's no excuse for slavery, and there's no excuse for totalitarianism. There's no excuse for coercion and all of this stuff. I've done nothing but read about the Nazis and the communists for the last year and a half. Every time I go through it, I get a little deeper. In the last pass, learned everything I could about Hitler, learned everything I could about Stalin, learned everything I could about Stalin's executioners. Now I'm dealing with Hitler's henchmen. Read 3 biographies of Himmler. I'm reading read 1. I'm finishing a 2nd biography of Goebbels. And I need to understand this stuff. And the more of it I understand, the more I realize that this is awful, and it's only awful because of compliance and because of people turning a blind eye. And I've got enough history to answer that question. If somebody said, you want to go see this Nazi planet? Yes. Do you want to go see this Nazi planet and be used as a tool of the Nazis to either enslave your people or just to help them continue to enslave their people? No, I'll pass. So that's my answer on that one. 2 to go. Cindy Lucin, our friend also, who's been very kind of, some of you have been so kind to me during this latest period, and Cindy and Cheryl, 2 of those people. What do you suppose the universe looks like if you were able to perceive it from the perspective that includes another dimension? Also, do you and I exist in a dimension that we're only dimly aware of? I suspect that we are multidimensional creatures, which we are able to perceive in 3 dimensions, but I don't know that for a fact. The best way to get to that is to look at something called a hypercube, tesseract. Now, you can see a picture of a tesseract online. I had this funny, because I had this thought about a couple nights ago when I was sitting there just sleeping or waking up from sleeping. One of the things about a tesseract is a representation. It's called a hypercube because it's a cube that looks like a cube within a cube, and it's drawn in such a way as to give you an illusion that all 4 axes are perpendicular to each other, not just 3. So you have the 3 axes, X, Y, and Z, that are perpendicular 90 degrees to each other, and then there's a 4th axis that also looks like it's 90 degrees to the other 3. It obviously can't be 90 degrees to the other 3, and even though you can look at it, you can't see the 4th dimension, and we never can. A one-eyed jack in Flatland cannot see the 3rd dimension. All he can see is what's inside the card, nothing above or below the card. But this thing sets up enough of a shadow on the wall of the cave that it gives you just a visceral kind of a feeling. And so what's interesting about this thought I had was that if you look at a tesseract on a computer screen, here's a picture of a tesseract, it's not helping, because a cube, a drawing of a cube, of an actual cube, is a two-dimensional representation of a three-dimensional object. The way to see a tesseract is with a three-dimensional model, and I've seen three-dimensional models of tesseracts where you can see them in 3 dimensions. You hold it. Then you actually have a three-dimensional model of a fourth-dimensional object. If you have a picture of a tesseract on a computer screen, your computer screen is flat. You have a four-dimensional object on a two-dimensional screen. So ideally, you should see a tesseract in your hands, should hold it in your hands as a physical model. But if you look at it, you can imagine a world where there's X, Y, and Z, and then out. That's the only way I can describe it. There's X, there's Y, and there's Z, and then there's out of all 3 of those, and you can look down on them. But one of the things about being in a fourth-dimensional creature looking at me can see inside me and outside me and all of me at the same time. He not only has a full 360-degree view of me vertically and horizontally, he can see the back of me and the front of me at the same time. He can also see inside me. How do you make sense out of that? Well, if you look at a bacteria, a two-dimensional creature, as good as virtually two-dimensionals, a bacteria looks at another bacteria. It can't see what's behind the bacteria, but from the third dimension, we can see here's a bacteria, and there's a bacteria, and blocked by the view of bacteria number 2, there's bacteria number 3 behind him. We can see above the bacteria that the other bacteria can't see past. So a three-dimensional creature can see through walls, can see through me, can see through matter, see all kinds of things. So it's kind of groovy and kind of cool. By the way, if you go to YouTube, you can see animations. Look for Tesseract animation or multidimensional animations, and you'll see things like cubes and stuff that are turning in on themselves. And obviously, it's not the real fourth or fifth dimension, but it gives you a sense. It gives you a like, whoa! It gives you a kind of a, man, that's a little creepy and kind of cool. Can't recommend it highly enough. It's very hypnotic and very cool. And the last question of our big astronomy show, which is now 1 hour and 32 minutes in and counting, is from George A. Freeland, who asks, which star system would you like to own given available current knowledge of exoplanets? I would like to own the Sol system. That's the one I'd like to own because that's where the money is, in my opinion. So if I could pick one star system to own, I would own this one, because that's where the money is. It's certainly where the great real estate is, and the hot babes and the cool cars and the fast jets. That's where I would like to put down a marker. I know I'm being a little facetious here, but in a way I'm also not being facetious. I may be looking like I'm incredibly shallow. Am I incredibly shallow, or am I unbelievably deep? What I mean by that is this. It's a flip answer, but it's not only the solar system we know the most about. I'd be willing to bet you that of all the exoplanets that we found, none of them match Earth. And I mean even match Earth objectively. You can say, well, we love Earth because it's our planet and it's our home and we can survive here. Yeah, but anybody's ever looked at high-definition pictures of Mars from space, like, oh, you look at the moon, it's like, oh, it's so beautiful and rugged. And you look at Saturn, oh my God, the pastels and the rings, and Jupiter and the swirl and the pattern and the power and the size, and you're like blown away by all this. But you look at the Earth in space and it knocks the wind out of you. And it knocks the wind out of you because its beauty is not just a function of the fact, oh, that's our home. Because our home could be Mars, and we could look at Earth and think, well, Mars is our home. If I was a Martian and I'm a present-day Martian, I can't imagine a world where I'm a present-day Martian and look at Earth and Mars and not think, man, this Earth is blowing my planet away. Earth is astonishing. It's astonishing. I'm literally speechless. It's astonishing. Not just the beauty of it and the water and the clouds and the terrain and the weather. It's never the same. It's never ever been the same. Earth has never been the same ever over any pace from 1 minute to another. It's always been a little bit different. And you can't say that about the moon. The moon is pretty damn near the same every single day until some new object hits big enough to make a crater that we can see. But Earth is constantly changing. And then the miracles of all the forms of life and all the details of life and the history of life and animals that were here and aren't here anymore and all of that. but it's just spectacular on so many levels. It's so wondrous. It certainly is unique. There may be other planets like Earth, and there may be other planets that are so much like Earth that they are indistinguishable from Earth except for the outline of the continents or something. But even then, I'd have to be impressed. I really would have to be impressed. And by the way, you think, so many people are committing suicide over Avatar. They wanted to be the Na'vi so badly. They wanted to be these sleek, tall, blue aliens who could, have sex with plants through their hair and all this other stuff. But I thought the Na'vi planet, while very beautiful. Those first scenes walking through the bioluminescence, yeah, it's breathtaking, it's cool. But it's kind of boring, It's a jungle. Okay, fabulous. It's all a jungle, apparently. Yeah, pretty much all a jungle. No rocky cliffs, no desert southwest, no Himalayas, no ocean, no Antarctica, nothing. No, it's all just one giant forest. We're all together. All right. Yeah, I'm bored. Earth, the variety of Earth, the landscapes from Earth, everything. And by the way, something else too we don't really appreciate. Earth's big. It's a big planet. I know it looks small compared to Jupiter. Jupiter. Yeah, well, Jupiter can't walk on Jupiter. Jupiter's a milkshake, and so's Saturn, and so's Uranus, and so's Neptune. They're giant milkshakes. They're not really planets. The terrestrial planets, Earth is the biggest. Venus is slightly smaller, but once you get Venus and Earth out of the picture, Mars is, a quarter the size of the Earth, and from there it goes downhill fast. You look at Ceres, it's the size of Texas. That's the biggest of the asteroids of the minor planets. The Moon is a decent-sized minor planet, but it's a big planet. And I've flown over a fair part of it, and I can tell you how big this planet is. I've moved at 550 miles an hour over this planet. I've taken 18 hours to go from Thailand to Los Angeles, and virtually all of that is just H2O. I've flown from LA to the East Coast more times than I can count. And when you're heading home and you hit the Rockies, you think, man, I'm almost home. No, you still have an hour and a half west of the Rockies. You've got an hour and a half of desert wasteland, uninhabitable wasteland, some of which is called Arizona, before you get to the coast. And even our coast, the California coast, LA is not noticeably different than Arizona, except that we've got people here. We can do a little irrigation. At least we could before the progressives decided to shut all this down to protect the sardine up there. So, yeah, man, it's Earth all the way. And one of the, just to put a little button on this, I didn't want to make this about space exploration, but when I was a kid and a young person, I was a lot more liberal than I was, and I was never anti-American, never anti-business, never anti-military, but more liberal than I am today, certainly. I used to think that if I could get in a spaceship and go to Jupiter or live on Mars, I wanted to live on Mars, live on the moon. I wanted to live on the moon so badly. I don't want to live on the moon anymore. I want to walk on the moon. I want to come home. I'd like to go to Jupiter, take a year or 2 or 3 or 4, and then come home and retire to my ranch in Montana. I don't want to live out there. I want to experience it, but I don't want to live there. And when you get to this idea that, you're going to be an astronaut, yes, you're going to live your life in a tin can, yes. If you'd asked me this when I was 14, 15, 7, 10, 20, 30, wasn't in my mid-40s when I started to think, what, maybe not. Maybe I don't want to live in a tin can or a base in a submarine, right? I don't think I want to live in a submarine. I want to ride in a submarine, but I want to live in a submarine. And that's important. And that kind of goes to this solar system I would pick too. Now, to answer your question in the form that you gave it, I'll give you the simplest little answer. If I could pick a solar system that wasn't ours, I'd pick Tau Ceti. The reason I'd pick Tau Ceti is I just like the sound of Tau Ceti. I think it sounds scientific and cool. Alpha Centauri's got I take it back. I take Alpha Centauri. I take Alpha Centauri because I'm of an age where, with Lost in Space and all of the studying I did, and all of the just research in the library, and ion drives, and looking at this stuff when I was 13, and all this stuff, Alpha Centauri has a magic about it. It's got some snap, man. Alpha Centauri is Alpha frickin' Centauri. Where are you going? We're going to Alpha Centauri. All right, That's the shortest distance you can go and still go. And, yeah, it's got some fun to it. Anyway, my friends, it's about 10 minutes to 8 Pacific time, which would make it a little bit before 11 out there on the East Coast. And I think somebody said they're watching from New Zealand, which is mind-boggling to me. But hello, Kiwis, hello, Aussies, hello, China, hello, Europe, hello, South America. It's absolutely spectacular and amazing. And not just people who are watching now from all around the world, people watching throughout time, meaning the next couple days, weeks, months, years. And as we said before, centuries, because every single word of the 180 hours of the Stratosphere Lounge is an imperishable nugget of wisdom and must be recorded on titanium inscribed with, fluoric acid so that it will last forever. Some people actually believe their own press conferences. I'm not one of those people. Anyway, my friends, it's going to wrap it up for tonight. I do want to thank all of you for your many kind wishes. And I feel great. I feel much better. And I expect I'm going to be feeling a little bit better every day. So that's good news. Be little slips here and there and relapses, but I get the feeling I might... like I said, the first thing I saw when I saw that chart I pointed out earlier, that cortisol chart, the first thought I had was, oh, thank God. Thank God. Thank God. Thank God. Thank God. Here's some evidence. And look, it's not like you're at 70% of capacity and you're this tired, Bill. You're at 5% of capacity and you're this tired. That's great news. You're gonna be fine. And I would encourage all the rest of you out there to take a serious look at things before you find yourself in there. Thank you very much, Guatemalan Water Snake, for reminding me. You mentioned it earlier. I swore I was going to do it, then I just plain forgot it. So, ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of the most insane individual I ever knew, man who made me literally pound my head against a thick oak door as hard as I could because I was so frustrated and angry and upset. On behalf of my friend and mentor, Jack Horkheimer, who not only taught me an awful lot about astronomy, but he told me how to tell a story. Jack Horkheimer could turn the Apollo program into Camelot. Jack Horkheimer could turn the Copernican revolution into a German cabaret. Jack Horkheimer was an amazing storyteller and an amazing artist who not only taught me how to tell stories, which is all I do these days, he taught me a lot about astronomy. He taught me a lot about music. He taught me a lot about everything. And most importantly, Jack Horkheimer gave me a chance. He let me write a planetarium show when I was 15 years old. And when somebody tried to change it and edit it, he said, "You leave that alone. Take your hands off that script. That boy's a writer." I wouldn't be here without him. And he was bat guano crazy, but he was a really interesting dude, and I knew him for 30 years. So on behalf of my friend and mentor, Jack Horkheimer, and my friend Phil Trick and everybody else that worked at the Miami Space Transit Planetarium, I'd like to take this opportunity to see if I can kind of get back there long enough to do a Horkheimer impression. Greetings, fellow stargazers. Tonight, in the dark skies of summer, we see looming over the city of Miami Scorpius, the giant scorpion. That weird laugh. I will say this, though. Keep looking up out there, astronomers. Keep looking up. Whatever you do, I'm Bill Whittle, and keep looking up. I miss that raging nutcase. I do. I absolutely do. Oh, good. Here's a Stratosphere Lounge banner to close the show with my adrenal stress profile behind it. See, I'm not making this up. It's the exact same graphic I used at the beginning. There's something nutty about the software. We'll see you next week. I'll see if I can get it solved. But we know I won't. Takes the charm away. Bye now.